The 18 Strong Podcast, episode number 146, The Golfer's Guide to Hydration.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Pellizzero, where it's our mission here to help you improve your game of golf in all realms possible, whether that be performance, nutrition, fitness, mental game, and it's our job to provide you with great information. So this week, our episode is going to be a little bit of a different format. Normally we do an interview style where I'm reaching out and talking to some sort of a coach or professional or somebody in the world of golf and fitness. But this week, I'm going to dig into a topic that I feel is relevant to every single person that is listening to this show right now and every single person that isn't listening to this show right now, because I'm going to talk about hydration this week. And so whether you're a 30 handicap golfer or you're a PGA professional, this is going to apply to you. And whether you're a golfer or not, this applies to you. But we're going to give some strategies specifically around you playing better golf based on, how you're hydrating, how you're preparing yourself when you go out on the course. So we all know that golf is a very difficult game to play. It's hard enough to score and stay focused and do all the different things that we need to do. And usually when we work on improving our game of golf, we rely on fixing our technique. Many of us are now working on our fitness. Maybe we're working through some sort of an injury or pain level, or you're just practicing and learning how to improve your skills. But all of those things take a long period of time in order to improve. You have to put in a lot of work. You have to put in a lot of effort. Sometimes you have to put in a lot of money. But your hydration is something that, as you're going to see in this episode, has a much bigger effect on what you're doing out there than you may realize, but can also be remedied very quickly with some tips and some strategies before you go to the course, days before you go to the course, but especially when you go onto the course and on game day. So we're going to walk through some of those. Now, being that 18 Strong is a format where we get to talk to a lot of coaches and players, I've had the opportunity to talk to people about what they use, what they have their players using, and what they've found success with. We even had an episode with Rob Yang, who I think it was episode number 42, who came on and talked a little bit about hydration and nutrition. He's an expert in all of these. And so definitely refer back to that episode if you haven't listened to it. And Rob's article on the TPI website was one of the ones that I used in reference for this show as well. But I've also tried some different options of products myself, tried them with clients, just kind of get some feedback and anecdotal stories on what my experience is as well. So I wanted to do some research on, what we really need to be looking out for and why we can't always believe the marketing that's out there around some of the biggest products, the biggest name products that you might even see. You probably know what I'm talking about. We'll get into that a little bit later in the show. Now, I want to remind you that I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not an expert in hydration. I'm simply a guy who loves this game, loves to play, loves to work on my own personal fitness, but also the fitness of my clients, and wanted to provide as much information for you guys and dig in and do some research so I understood this topic better. And I figured if I wanted to learn more about it, you guys probably wanted to learn more about it. So this was something that I was thinking about. I recently went on a trip to Gulf Shores, Alabama to played a little bit of golf, but it was a family trip, went to the beach. Side note, we had a crazy tropical storm Cindy, which really impacted the week a little bit, but nonetheless was able to get out and play a couple of rounds of golf. And prior to going to Gulf Shores, I knew that it was likely going to be hot. It was likely going to be humid and muggy. And so I wanted to bring a couple of the different products that I've used before. And so I knew that I had to prepare for that. And so that got me thinking about this whole topic of hydration and what is it that we really need to pay attention to? And what is it that's really happening in our body that causes the symptoms of hydration and dehydration, which is kind of the more pertinent question. What can we do to prevent being dehydrated? So in this episode, I'm going to break down the basics of hydration and dehydration, and we're going to look at what's going on in the body. We're going to look at the main components that have an effect on whether you're hydrated, how much water you're losing, how much you're retaining, and what effects it has on your game. Especially, what does it do to you when you're playing? How does it affect your decision making? How does it affect your skills? How does it affect your motor control? And we're going to look at a couple of the products that I've used. So I'm going to kind of walk you through a couple and when I use them and why I would use them in certain situations. And would love to get some feedback from some of you out there as far as what you use as well. And then I'm going to give you a strategy at the end. I'm going to give you 7 tips on how you can improve your hydration levels and how you can maximize the effectiveness of using these in order to play better golf. So you're not worn out at the end of your rounds. So you're not, losing strokes because of just sloppy errors, those kinds of things. Because we know we've all had them. You've walked up the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th fairway, and you're just a little bit more sluggish. It's a hot, steamy, muggy day, and you've had these issues or these problems. So we're going to talk about how you can really kind of break that cycle by just making a few simple changes. Now, before we get into all the details and the whole topic of hydration, I just want to say a quick thanks to our sponsor for this week's episode, which is the PGAtour.com, especially the new players pages on PGAtour.com. So they are much cleaner. They've made a lot of different changes to them, so it's a lot easier to navigate through and see what you want to see. So there's an easier way to scroll through content, especially when you're on your phone. You can scroll through the rounds in order to see all 4 rounds that the players are playing. And you get a live scorecard on each page when the player is playing. When he's actively playing, you get a live scorecard that updates as the match goes on. Then you also have recent content on there, which is kind of cool. You can see recent content about the player or even their social media feeds where you see what kind of activity they have on, who they're chirping at, who they're talking to, which is kind of cool to stay engaged with them. So there's also a much deeper set of stats on there for all you stats nerds that like to dig in and look at what these guys have done, how they're trending, those kinds of things. So there's so much information on there, but it's all in a much smoother, sleeker, cleaner layout. So if you haven't checked out the new players pages on PGAtour.com, just head over there, PGAtour.com, and look up the players pages. All right, so let's start talking a little hydration, because I think that we've often been misled when it comes to what we should be drinking, what we should be using. We constantly see barrages of images of athletes drinking these neon-colored sports drinks, like your Gatorades, like your Powerades, things like that. And it's kind of maddening to me to the point that these things have become so popular because they really aren't the best choice. And I'm going to dig into this a lot later in the show. But if there's one thing I want you to get out of this episode, it's that those products are not the greatest thing that you can do for your hydration and for your nutrition. So I won't get on my soapbox for too long, but I have a 9-year-old son, and I have 3 kids, and they all want Gatorade. They want Gatorade all the time, and we're pretty adamant about not letting them have it every now and then, of course. But kids their age drink it all the time. They drink it just as a regular drink. And I think people have this perception that it's a healthy, nutritious drink, not realizing how much sugar and sodium and different things are in it. So just know that it's a much different formulation from when they originally designed it to be a hydration drink for the Florida Gators, which is the backstory. And it's now become a mass product for everyone at all times of the day. And we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit. So basically, the idea behind hydration is the body needs water for survival. And if you want to think about it this way, think of a car, and if water is the gas for a car, then we always hear the term electrolytes. Then the electrolytes can kind of be considered like the oil of the car. It delivers good stuff like water, and electrolytes deliver good stuff like oxygen, nutrients, and hormones while removing waste and other junk from the body. So all of this, the combination of all of these, help regulate the body and cellular temperatures and basically kind of keep us at a natural homeostatic stasis. So hydration, the definition of hydration is basically the condition of having adequate fluid in the tissues of the body, meaning that our body simply needs a certain amount of fluid in order to perform all of the different operations that go on in our body. Our body is run on electrical impulses. This fluid helps to transmit those impulses, deliver nutrients, as we mentioned. So hydration is needed. Dehydration is defined as an abnormal depletion of body fluids, or the body needs more fluids than are present or are being input in order for it to function naturally or normally. So basically, it's at a low point. It's depleted of some of this fluid and can't perform the operations necessary. And it's not getting the fluid that it needs. It's not getting the nutrition that it needs to replenish that in order to do what it needs to do. So the question is, what's normal hydration? So the only real way, and this is kind of interesting because it's hard to really measure your own personal, body's water percentage, but ideally for men, your hydration percentage or your body's water percentage should be about 50 to 65%. So you're 50 to 65% water if you're in an optimal state. Women are more around the 45 to 60% range. Now, the only way that you can really measure is with a body fat scale that uses bioelectrical impedance analysis, which is a fancy words for saying it sends electrical impulses or signals, harmless electrical signals through your body, measures how fast it goes through your body, and gives the device an idea of, the density of the tissues and how much fluid's in there. So an easy way for you to check your own levels of hydration is basically kind of pay attention to your urine and how much you're expending urine throughout the day. So if you're emptying your bladder 5 to 8 times a day, that's kind of the norm. And you also want your urine to be more of a light, kind of a pale yellow color. So I know this is a little bit of a graphic visual, but if you look at your urine and it's super bright yellow, that gives, or even more so, kind of a brownish look. That tells you that you're possibly in a dehydrated state. Now, a couple things that can have an effect on that color is if you just took your vitamins, your multivitamin. We've all had that neon green, wake you up in the morning with a bright light, kind of a urine. But if you notice it's more of a brownish color, odds are you have you've lost some of your hydration. If you have completely clear urine all the time, that might be a sign of having a little bit too much water in your system. So just a couple things for you to pay attention to. Now, when it comes to dehydration, we've all I'm sure you've all felt it. You've been on a hot, sweaty day and you can tell you're getting tired, you're getting fatigued. So some of the signs that you can look for, and you've probably experienced before, are lightheadedness, dizziness. Some of these are a little bit more of the dramatic ones, but headaches, dry mouth. You get that cotton mouth. You're on the golf course and you got that cotton mouth. You feel weak. You can even get to the point where you're feeling confused, and possibly the one that I hear the most is muscle cramping. And even muscle cramping later on after a round of golf or after a workout is probably one of the most noted side effects of dehydration, and one that bothers people, and they have trouble figuring out how they can get rid of these cramps. Well, usually the first thing we look at is how hydrated are you? What's your water intake been that day? And, what have you been drinking? What have you been eating? There's two labels of dehydration basically. And one comes from the loss of water, one comes from the loss of electrolyte, and then there's kind of a combination of the two. So if you've lost too much just purely water, that means that your body is lacking H2O. They call that hypernatremia or hypertonicity. If you are more depleted with electrolytes, which we'll get into those a little bit later and what those are, we call that hyponatremia or hypotonicity. So hyper is where you have too little water. Hypo is where you have too little electrolytes. And then if you have a combination of both, they call that isonatremia. I know that probably doesn't really mean a whole lot to you, but just want to give you some clinical words here. So in case you hear that, you have an idea. And again, there are so many articles that I kind of consulted with in order to put this episode together. I'm going to put all of these articles in links at the end of the show notes, so you can go through, and if you want to really dig into this topic, you can go through and see through the articles some of the different topics and go into a little bit more detail there. So let's talk a little bit about the different levels, though, because dehydration is kind of a broad term. So there are levels of dehydration that they classify, and you're going to be surprised at how much you can be affected just by having a small amount of dehydration. So basically the levels are, this goes back to your body weight percentage, and you can do this by measuring yourself or weighing yourself before and after a round of golf if that's what you want to look at. But if you are, they break it into 3 different categories. We'll call them mild, moderate, and severe. So a mild amount of dehydration is when you've lost more than about 2%, more than 2% of your total bodily fluids. So again, a way to measure that is weigh yourself before your round or before your workout, and then measure or weigh yourself after your round or your workout. Then there is moderate. Moderate means that you've exceeded greater than a 5% loss of total bodily fluids. And then severe would be greater than 10% loss of bodily fluids. And when you get to the severe state, that's when you are looking at an emergency. That's when you call the hospital. I mean, that's when people are thrown on IVs. So there's definitely a severity to the levels of hydration. And if you get to that point, that can be a serious thing where you can not only look at long-term impairments and kidney failures and organ function, things like that, but you can look at even the possibility of death when it gets bad enough. So once you get dehydrated, things can escalate pretty darn quickly. So we mentioned electrolytes. Electrolytes are the term that has been really commercialized because of companies like Gatorade. They are the ones that kind of brought this term to our attention for the most part. And they're a super important thing that needs to be inputted into our body. And we have to have these in order for our bodies to function properly. So bottom line, they are minerals or substances in the body that they become ions in a solution, and they're able to conduct electricity that helps the body perform normal functions. So basically, it allows the body to do its job by conducting the electricity. So these electrolytes, they work both independently and dependently on each other to do different things like moving glucose around and moving other nutrients into and out of your cells and helping remove waste products and other water from your cells. When you hear the term electrolytes, there's basically 5 major electrolytes, and these will sound familiar. It's sodium, potassium, magnesium, chloride, and calcium. So we've all heard these different minerals, and this gives you an idea of how important they are. Now, they all have different functions, which we won't go into, but each of these has a role working together and separately. And if our bodies are excreting these, which we often do when we sweat, when we exercise, we lose these along with the water in our body. So it's important that we end up replenishing these. And that's where the whole idea of, drinking a Gatorade to get your electrolytes, and that's why it does work. I mean, it does help. But again, it's not the best option. But this is important to mention here because we're going to get into a couple different products and why they place these electrolytes in these products versus just using regular water. So the question is, why is all this important? What does this mean? Well, our bodies rely on these electrical functions. And there are certain parts of the body that rely more on these than others. And there's 3 big ones. It's the brain, the nervous system, and muscles. All pretty important, I would say. So we have to make sure that we're keeping enough fluid and hydration and these electrolytes in our body so these things can function the way they need to. Now, the brain is 85% water. And I got this from Robert Yang's article. The brain is 85% water, and not drinking enough water means that there's not enough blood flow to the brain. If the brain doesn't get its circulation, your ability to focus and process on the golf course decreases. Now, there's another phenomenon that most golfers experience at some point in their life, and that's back pain. If you've ever had back pain, you probably haven't thought that your hydration level might impact that, but the discs in your back are also mainly water, just like your brain is mainly water. Most of our bodies are mainly water. But by staying hydrated, it means that you're going to have more support, you're going to have more fluid in the discs in your spine, which creates more support for your spine. When the discs compress or when you lose fluid out of the discs in your back, which is basically losing the water, losing the hydration, it can put more pressure on the small intervertebral joints, so the joints surrounding the spine. Because if that disc shrinks, then the entire spine compresses a little bit, putting extra pressure on those different joints. It even can close down the space in between each of the vertebrae, which is where the nerves exit, and that can often relate to a lot of back pain, nerve pinching, those types of things. So if you've ever thought about, or if you've ever had back pain, and especially on the golf course, and it seems like it gets worse when it's hotter or anything like that, that's often the case why. It's not necessarily just because your muscles are getting sore. It could be because your spine is actually changing. And a little bit of a fun fact, when you go to bed at night and you lay on your bed and you're in that anti-gravitational position, so gravity's not pushing on you all day long, you will actually absorb a little bit more fluid into your spine because your discs are able to kind of soak up a little bit more of that fluid. Now, unfortunately, as you're sleeping, you're also getting a little bit more dehydrated. So it's kind of a balance there. But just know that your level of hydration has a lot of impact on what's going on in your back. Now, aside from just the painful side of it, there are definite cognitive and motor changes that are going to happen in your golf game. And so basically, there are effects on the level of performance that you'll have on the course. And there was a study in 2012 done by Smith, Newell, and Baker that looked at 7 low handicap golfers and took them through several skills and cognitive tests. And each golfer hit 30 balls, and they hit them to different targets, and they measured their accuracy to the target and their distance control. They also were shown 30 different golf location images. So they had an image of a golf location, and they were asked to judge how far away it was. Then they took those scores, and they made sure that everyone was completely well hydrated. Then 7 days later, they deprived each of the golfers from beverages for 12 hours and made sure that they were up to 3% dehydrated. So just in that mild range of dehydration, which we talked about before. And the result was that they had a decrease in motor control and decrease in cognitive ability, which basically boiled down to hitting shots about 12% shorter and being 93% less accurate in their target accuracy. And then as well as on the distance control, or judging the distance, they went from being able to come within 4 to 7 yards to 9.5 to 15 yards. So there's quite a bit of a dramatic difference there. And that was just with mild dehydration. So this was the first study that showed that mild dehydration can impair distance, impair accuracy, and distance judgment during golf performance. So what I want to basically impress upon you is how important just having the proper amount of fluid and water in your system is. Now, regarding how to stay hydrated, first and foremost, water is the end-all be-all. So there are so many sports drinks out there, there's so many supplements out there, but ultimately, your best strategy is to drink good quality water on a regular basis. And there's a simple equation for you to do that. Basically, take your body weight in pounds and just divide it by 2. And that's kind of a general rule of thumb of how much water you should have every single day. So if you're a 200-pound man, you divide that by 2, that's 100 ounces of water that you should have. Now, if you're going to be active, if you're going to be exercising, you know that you're going to expend some of the liquids in your body, and then you should drink a little bit more. If you're not going to be very active, maybe you need to drink a little bit less, but use that as the basic template that you can judge yourself by every single day. Now, I mentioned the quality of water that you should be drinking, and this is a topic that you wouldn't believe how much information is out there and how detailed we can go into this. And so I'm going to give you a reference to go to from one of our favorite experts on the show, Sean Stevenson, who has a fantastic podcast, The Model Health Show. We had Sean on to talk about sleep and nutrition several times actually on our show, but I want to refer you to an episode that he did, which is number 73 of the Model Health Show, that talked all about water and types of water, and basically discussing the fact that tap water and just even regular bottled water isn't necessarily as clean and healthy as you think. And just because you're filtering your water doesn't mean that you're really purifying as much as it should be or need be. So bottom line, the best kind of water to get is fresh spring water, which is not very easy to get. But there's a couple things that you can do that will really help with the quality of what you're drinking. We have to be aware of plastics, and I don't, whether you are one of those people that believes or doesn't believe in the fact that plastics have harmful chemicals in them, I'm going to stress upon you that there are issues with drinking things, eating things out of plastic containers, especially when it's related to heat or it's related to light, and especially regarding the water bottles. One thing that Sean mentioned in his show was the fact that the plastics of water bottles are not even so much affected by heat causing chemicals from the bottles to leak into the water, but they're especially sensitive to light, which is very interesting because the lighter the bottle, the more effect it has from the sunlight, the UV rays. So what he stresses highly, and what I would recommend to you, is to use either a glass bottle or to use some sort of the Yeti cups. Everybody's got a Yeti cup these days. I think it's funny. Everybody's walking around with their 64-ounce Yeti cup, and who knows what they're drinking. I know some of those soccer moms aren't just drinking water. But side note, to use something like that where you know that the light, the UV rays aren't going to affect any leaching of chemicals into the water there. I get made fun of all the time because I tend to drink out of a huge mason jar, which I have right next to me right now. Anytime I'm on a podcast, you may have heard Kelly Starrett make fun of me for drinking out of the mason jar. But I'm a big believer that using glass to not allow that stuff to impact any of our body and any of our functions is important. So that's one thing. But another disturbing and shocking fact that Sean mentioned on his show was the fact that some tap waters have been tested and show traces of pharmaceuticals in the properties of the water. And that has to do with, what's going on with what people are flushing down their toilets, what's getting into the rivers, and all of these different factors and how they're not being filtered out properly. And then that's being, pushed through our pipes into our glasses, into our mouths, and who knows what kind of an effect that's having on us. So just want to make you aware of the fact that there are. Now, before we jump into some different brands that I've used and some different products, I just want to say a quick thanks to our sponsor for today's show, which is Rad Roller. If you haven't checked out the Rad Roller products, you can go to radroller.com and look at the whole suite of soft tissue myofascial tools that they've put together, and it's making it much easier for us to manage our bodies, create that mobility that we need for our golf swing, and really kind of knock out some of those aches and pains that we have in the shoulders, the legs. Everybody talks about using a foam roller these days, but just your standard foam roller can't do what some of these different tools can do, and how they can get to different parts of your body and work on some of the specific muscles and areas that need the most attention. So I especially love using the Rad Roller Ball itself, as well as some of the Rad Rounds. The Rad Roller Ball, which is the double ball, it looks like two lacrosse balls mashed together. I love using that on the upper back and working out some of the things in the thoracic area. And then also the smaller Rad Rounds are great for the feet, great for the hands. They've got one small enough to do the hands. It almost is like the size of a marble. And then they've got another small one that is great for working on the elbow and the forearms, and anytime you got just like one of those hard to reach spots. So if you haven't checked out the Rad Roller products, go to radroller.com, use the code 18strong. You'll get a sweet discount and you'll get your hands on some of the greatest soft tissue products out there. Okay, now that we've talked about some of the basics and what hydration is, let's discuss some of the different products that are out there, some recommendations that I might have for you and things that we've used. And then let's talk about a couple different liquids that you may have questions about, that I had questions about, what they do to our body. Do they help? Do they hurt? So as I've mentioned, I've tried plenty of sports drinks on the market, and I found a couple that I really like, a couple that I use. And I have actually had the chance to talk with several of these companies, people from these companies, regarding their products, and was able to ask some questions, which I think is very important. Now, I'd like to point out that we here at 18 Strong, we don't have any affiliation with the first two companies that I'm going to mention, which is the Right Stuff USA and Amino Vital. Not to say that in the future we wouldn't love to do something with them. It's just that these are two products that we've tried, we've trusted, and we wanted to mention simply because of that fact, not because there's any financial reason behind it. The third company, Designs for Health, is kind of our preferred provider of supplements regarding like multivitamins, fish oil. So we do have a marketplace on 18 Strong where you can get some of those pharmaceutical grade supplements. But I'm going to talk about another product of theirs, their electrolytes. But just regarding these different products, I wanted to kind of point out a few things and what differentiates each product and why I use it. So the Right Stuff USA is basically it's an electrolyte package it's a concentrated package that you mix in with your water bottle, and you mix it into a big water bottle. And the cool story behind it is it was designed by NASA apparently because astronauts were having difficulty with dehydration coming back into the atmosphere from outer space. And so the story is that they developed this serious hydration product. Their tagline is serious hydration for serious athletes. And it was formulated in order to help them with their hydration. And now it's being used by professional sports teams, Division I schools. And I've had verification from several people I know that work in these Division I programs that this is in fact one of the bigger products that they use, as opposed to maybe the label that's on the jug of what they have on the sidelines. This is the product that a lot of them actually use for their hydration. And that being, like football teams, basketball teams, hockey, a lot of different sports. Now, the main thing about the Right Stuff is that it has a lot of sodium in it. So when most people look at it, they'll say, holy cow, I think it's like 1,700 milligrams of sodium or something like that. I don't have a package with me. But that's because it's an electrolyte that is often excreted when we sweat. And so this is a product that I tend to use if it's a very hot day, or if I have a client that I know is going to go on like a member guest tournament, and he's going to be out in 90-degree weather. He's going to have a couple rounds. This is one that I definitely recommend because I know it's going to replenish a lot of that sweating that's going on, as well as possibly some dehydration from some other fluids that might be imbibed on during that round. But I love this product. I've used it many times myself, and I've had people say that they notice an immediate effect from this product when they're using it on the course. Another side note, and they actually have this in some of their marketing material, which I think is great, is that because of its hydrating effects, it can also be very effective in the hangover cure. It can be very effective in preventing, that dehydration that you get from a long, or several beers on the course or a night out on the town with the boys or girls. So I just want to throw that in there. I know this is a health and fitness podcast, but it's also a realistic health and fitness podcast. And this kind of saved us a couple times at the World Golf Fitness Summit and other conventions. I know you probably don't think that the fitness people go out and have any drinks, but you'd be surprised at that as well. So this is definitely a product that I recommend I have in my toolbox. And again, I'm not promoting these to sell these. I'm just promoting these because, hey, this is what I use, and this is what the information that I think you're here to get. The other product that I really like and have gotten to like is Amino Vital. And you're probably seeing these commercials on TV, on the Golf Channel, and this is the one brand that's kind of getting out there in the golf marketplace. It's been around in the endurance athlete space for a while, I believe, but definitely getting out there in the golf market as well. And what they do is they don't have such the high concentration of sodium. They have different electrolytes that, different balance of electrolytes in there, but obviously from the name, amino, they also input amino acids into their products. And basically what the amino acids are, broad definition, amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. So a large portion of our cells, our muscles, our tissues are made up of amino acids, and meaning that these things carry out many of the important bodily functions like giving cells their structure. They also play a key role in transporting and storing nutrients. So amino acids have an influence on, functions of what our organs are doing, how our tendons and arteries, like the structure of all those, and they're essential for healing. So especially repairing muscle tissue. That's why you often see amino acids in post-recovery drinks and things like that. So they definitely have a benefit of being added into a product like this to help with repair, help with shuttling nutrients, help with removing waste. But specifically, the product that I've used and I think is kind of their number one product for golf is their Focus Zone product, which has amino acids that are specifically targeted to reducing fatigue, mental fatigue. And the way that they do that is that the amino acids actually block tryptophan. And you've probably heard of tryptophan before because it's what's, supposedly the big thing in the Thanksgiving dinner. It's in your turkey, and that's what causes you to pass out on the recliner with your top button of your pants unbuttoned. But what it does is tryptophan produces serotonin, and serotonin basically makes you tired and sleepy. So by blocking the tryptophan, not allowing the body to create serotonin, you don't go through that tired mental fatigue, and that's what keeps you more focused throughout your round. So again, I've used this product. It's again not as heavy salt laden as the right stuff. It's got a different blend. So this is one that I will tend to use on a pretty fresh, cool day, and I've definitely noticed a little bit of the focus effects in there. Another point to mention that I really liked about the company when I was talking to some of the guys at AminoVital was that they use what they call, I think it's AgiPure aminos, which are 99 to 100% pure. But their parent company is actually a company called Agimoto, and Agimoto was the first producer of pharmaceutical grade aminos and is still the biggest researcher and producer of aminos in the world. So really, most of the aminos that you get in any other product is created and produced by Agimoto. So you just know that it's a top quality company that is producing good quality products. So that had another feather in its cap for me. The other company that I wanted to recommend, or the product, is the electrolytes by Designs for Health. And Designs for Health is a company I've been using for years. It's a pharmaceutical grade company here in the United States. And as I mentioned, this is the one that we use for some of our supplement needs. We have a marketplace on 18 Strong, and this is what I provide for my clients for multivitamins, fish oil, pretty much most anything under the sun, pharmaceutical grade that would be needed, even proteins, grass-fed proteins, really good brand, really good products. But their electrolytes, again, are just a different blend of electrolytes, not nearly as high in sodium as the right stuff would be, but just another more mild blend of electrolytes that, again, just helps replenish all of those different things that we're losing when we sweat, when we perspire, when we exercise. Even as we eat and go to the bathroom, those are the kinds of things that end up, causing our body to lose some of this hydration. So we have to take all of that into effect. Now, there's so many other brands on the market. There's, I think, Swing Oil, Golferade. I just don't know those products as well. I don't know much about them and haven't tried them. So I can't speak to some of those other ones. And again, I'm really curious to hear what other products people have tried and really like, because you can't always trust the endorsements that are out there. Different golfers are represented by different companies and whatnot, but a lot of them, are paid a lot of money to do so. So I think it's important to hear from some of the people in the trenches that are using these different products. Now, again, where and when would I use each of these products? The right stuff is a very salty mixture that I'm going to use on a hot, sweaty, humid day, which we have a lot of those here in St. Louis, where it just gets muggy and you're dripping from head to toe. That's when I'm going to mix that in, and I'm going to try to sip it throughout my round. So I might have a couple packets of that with me and sip those throughout my round. I might even mix these up a little bit throughout the round. Maybe do one pack of one, do one pack of the AminoVital stuff, and just kind of mix it around a little bit and see what works best for you, because everybody has different needs. It's hard to really relegate how much you're losing, how much hydration you're going through, and what are the electrolytes that you've actually lost. So my first and foremost opinion would be to just test and maybe take some notes on how you felt and how you played, because isn't that what it's all about? All right, there are some other suggestions here that are not sports related companies. The first one, which Robert Yang talks about a lot, and that's just using a pinch of sea salt, Celtic sea salt or Himalayan sea salt. Both of these are organic, unrefined sea salts that have over 80 trace minerals that are going to help replenish your electrolytes. So some of those electrolytes are in there, and they're going to help replace that. So if you don't have a fancy sports drink or a supplement pack or anything, go to your local grocery store, get a bag of Celtic sea salt, which I have a huge bag here in my house. It's going to last me for 30 years. And I'll just take a little pinch, and it shouldn't taste salty. So if you have a big, like your normal style water shaker bottle, just take a little pinch and put some salt in there, and that's going to help replenish those electrolytes much more than just drinking regular water. I haven't mentioned this yet, but just drinking regular water the whole time, if you're on a hot, sweaty day, you're losing more than just that water. So sometimes just plain water isn't the best bet. Yes, we need to keep drinking it. We have to stay hydrated, but do that, on your regular time, regularly throughout the day when you're at work. But if you know you're going to be in an environment where you need performance, you're going to be sweating, I would recommend some sort of a supplement. And I didn't mention this before, but I meant to mention a study that was done with a group of firefighters I want to say it was at the University of Montana. And they studied these firefighters in these hot conditions, in these controlled hot conditions. It was a study that was controlled, but some of the firefighters drank just plain water. Some of the firefighters drank a supplement added to the water, a supplement of electrolytes. Didn't say what brand, didn't say how much. This was just I don't even have a link to the actual study, but this was just read in an article. And what it showed was that the firefighters needed less fluid to get back to the hydrated state when they used the supplement. So they didn't have to drink nearly as much. So they didn't have to consume, gobs and gobs and gobs of water to get back to the hydrated state. So it just goes to show that in those conditions, having a little bit of something extra in your water can definitely help. Okay, to talk briefly about the typical sports drinks, Gatorade, Powerade, whatever else is on the market, vitamin water. So as I mentioned, it's not the same formulation that they started with a long time ago. So it's not a high performance drink that was created in a lab for athletes, specifically for, the football team. This has become a much more commercialized marketplace. And, people are drinking it like it's just a regular glass of water or tea all the time. But what we have to look at are the true ingredients in there. Many of them have high fructose corn syrup, which we all have heard is no bueno. And then the amount of sugar in some of these, I didn't realize is just staggering. I mean, I realized there was sugar in it, but when I looked up the nutrition labels, it was showing that there were, between 14 to 36 grams of sugar in one of these bottles, one of these 20-ounce bottles of Gatorade. And to give you a bit of a picture there, 14 grams of sugar is like 3 teaspoons of sugar. So 3 spoonfuls of sugar into your bottle, up to 36 grams of sugar, which 36 grams of sugar is 9 spoonfuls of sugar. And that was pretty close to maybe just a little bit shy of your standard Coke or Pepsi. So just knowing that it has that much sugar, and yes, sugar can help with some of the absorption of some of these electrolytes and different things. But to me, that just seems like an excessive amount of sugar, especially because a lot of people are drinking these when there's no activity involved. It's just a kid getting out a vending machine when he's going to sit in class. So I just think that's kind of crazy. And knowing that, as well as some of the other preservatives that are in it to help preserve flavor, help preserve color, just aren't what you want to be putting in your body. All right, and then just briefly, I want to touch on alcohol and caffeine. Both of these are two things that I love, but are things that I try to keep in moderation. Actually, caffeine, especially coffee, is one of my weaknesses. I do love coffee. And I do love beer too, but that has dramatically decreased in recent years. But one thing you have to remember with alcohol, with coffee, which both are often associated with a round of golf, especially the recreational golfer that has a couple beers on the course or is drinking coffee on the way to, or maybe even during the round, which I've done plenty of times. But both of these are what we call a diuretic. And a diuretic basically blocks the reabsorption of water into the body. So it blocks ADH, which is a hormone called antidiuretic hormone. And so your kidneys aren't able to reabsorb the water that they then excrete the water as urine. So alcohol and caffeine both have implications of a diuretic. So when you're drinking these, you're definitely, that's why we always say you get more dehydrated when you're drinking alcohol. Same thing goes with coffee and caffeine, which I think is an interesting side note, that when people say that they need to sober up, they'll go grab a cup of coffee, but what they're really doing is just dehydrating themselves more. So they're getting the caffeine spike, but really what they're doing internally to their system is dehydrating themselves more. So odds are they're probably going to feel worse, might be a little bit more alert, but are most likely going to feel worse. So if you are going to be drinking on the course, or you're going out drinking, or you're having caffeine in the morning and you drink a lot of caffeine, you have to know that, and you have to prepare that, okay, I'm going to have to drink even more water, or I'm going to have to use one of these products or my Celtic sea salt to really counteract the damage that I'm doing with these other liquids. So again, I'm not a party pooper. I love both of them, but you have to be prepared and realize that you're going to be impacting your body's function, not to mention just your cognitive ability, your ability to perform a skill-related task. Alcohol is a depressant, so it's going to slow everything down. It's not going to allow you to coordinate as well. So you've all had that lecture before, though. And then lastly, I just want to look into sparkling water, because sparkling water has become a huge hit these days. We've got the LaCroix water here in the States. I don't know if you guys have it elsewhere, but and it's one of the things that I've really started to drink on a fairly regular basis, just when I want, another flavor besides just regular water. But I wanted to see if there was any ramifications regarding dehydration, or good or bad, what's going on with sparkling water. Basically, bottom line, what I could find is that sparkling water actually hydrates you just as well as regular water, but the carbonation most likely isn't going to allow you to drink as much of it as you would regular water. So you're already kind of depriving yourself of the amount of water that you would take in. So it's not probably the best hydration drink, but if you're going to use that as as an alternative to drinking that coffee or that beer or wine or whatever, which it's a great way if you're on a diet, you're losing weight and you're working on your nutrition and improving your eating and healthy lifestyle. It's a great substitute, but just realize it's not a great hydration drink just because you're not going to drink as much. Also, there is some concern of wearing away some of the enamel on your teeth. Not so much just the plain sparkling water, but because of some of the flavors that are put into these waters, the citrus flavors, even though a lot of them are naturally flavored with, oils from the fruits and things like that, those can just be a little bit acidic, and they can mess with your teeth, the enamel on your teeth. So beware. All right. Last thing, I know this is actually going on a lot longer than I anticipated. I thought this was going to be a short, condensed, little nutritional hydration guide, but there's a lot in here. Last thing I wanted to give you is just 7 quick steps or strategies that you can take to improve your hydration. And so if you take these things, you do these on a regular basis, you're going to be good to go. And this is definitely going to help you when you get on the golf course to, play better, not feel as fatigued and tired at the end of your round, and just to be able to think a little bit more clearly and mentally. So number 1 is drink water first thing in the morning. I mentioned that you get dehydrated when you sleep. So you want to drink a big glass of water in the morning. I'm a big fan of drinking lemon water, and typically you're going to want about 25% of your daily intake in that first session. So, wake up. Here's my normal routine. I wake up, I come down, I turn the teapot on that already has some water in it. I've got a lemon laid out from the night before. I slice it, I squeeze that in my glass, and then when the water warms up, doesn't have to boil, just warms up a little bit, I pour it into this big old monster mason jar, which is about 24 ounces, and I drink the whole thing before I drink my coffee. That's kind of my reward of drinking my water in the morning. So number 1 is drink water in the morning. Number 2 is select high quality water. So just make sure that the water source that you're getting is decent. Again, go listen to Sean's episode number 73, I believe it was, on the Model Health Show, if you want more information on that. But think about drinking out of glass, out of your stainless steel Yeti type cups, and not, putting a case of bottled water in your back seat that sits in your car and sits in the parking lot for 5 days, and you just pull a water bottle out. I know several of my clients told me that they were trying to improve their water that they were drinking, but that's what they would do. They'd just throw a big case of water in the back seat, and you get all hot and steamy, and the sun would be beating on it. And so, there's other concerns there. So number 2 is drink high quality water. Number 3 is on a daily basis, drink half of your body weight. So half of your body weight, your pounds, drink that much in ounces of water. And especially if you're working out or you're going to be golfing, that's when you need to drink a little bit more. So again, if you're a 200-pound person, you should be drinking 100 ounces of water on a daily basis. Number 4 is eat more fruits and vegetables, and eat these on a regular basis. Fruits and vegetables are packed with electrolytes. They're packed with fluids. So these have been shown to be more hydration-filled foods. So these can actually help you prepare your body for when you are in these situations where you might be sweating and performing. So it's not just a day of that you should be eating them, but on a regular basis. The more you tune your body into these good, healthy foods, which we talk about all the time, but you know this stuff, the more you eat these high-quality foods, not the prepackaged, processed stuff, but, legit food that was grown in a farm, that stuff's going to help your body tune in and work better. And it's going to help you balance everything out. It's going to make you more regular, and it's going to help your body regulate what's going on, the fluid and what you're losing and what you need. So the top hydrating foods here's a list of, I think 12. Yeah, here's a list of 12 foods that I found are, higher on the hydration spectrum. Coconut water, celery, watermelon, cucumber, kiwi, bell peppers, citrus fruits, carrots, cultured dairy, which I'm not a huge fan of dairy, but it was on the list, which meaning like Greek yogurt, things like that, pineapple, broccoli or cauliflower, and spinach. So a lot of your basic veggies and fruits. I like seeing citrus fruits on there because that makes me think back to my soccer games where all the moms would bring slices of oranges, and takes me back to my childhood days of hydrating on the sideline. So it makes me feel good that they actually were doing something for me. The number 5 strategy I would implement is limit your alcohol or coffee, or at least if you are going to be using, drinking beer or whatever, drinking coffee throughout your round, make sure that you're hydrating with some more fluids, because it's definitely going to cause an imbalance there. Number 6 is use some sort of high quality electrolyte and possibly an amino acid supplement like we talked about during physical activities. Just like it showed in that study with the firefighters, having that in your water during performance is going to require much less water that you need to put in your body, which is always good when you're walking on a golf course or you're exercising. You don't want a lot of that water sloshing around that can't get absorbed. So think about using some sort of a supplement to add into your water. And again, we have had some suggestions in the episode here. And then lastly, this is one that is often overlooked, but refuel after your exercise, after your competition. So at the end of your round of golf, go and get a big glass of water, or if you still have some of your supplement, drink some of that. Or a lot of these companies will make kind of a post-workout supplement. I know Amino Vital has a Pro Recovery, I think it's called, that is really good. And so, doing these things to then help you recover later on. So it's not all just about what's going on during, but also what's going to be happening in the future. So those are the 7 strategies to stay hydrated. Again, it's number 1, drink water first thing in the morning. Number 2, higher quality water. Number 3 is drink half of your body weight. Number 4 is eat more fruits and veggies. Number 5 is limit alcohol and coffee, or if you're not going to, drink more water at that time. Number 6 is use some sort of high quality supplement. And number 7 is refuel after exercise. So make sure you drink extra water. It's definitely something that most people don't tend to do. So, all right, I know that there was a lot covered in there. I'm going to put up the entire outline of all of my notes in the show notes page, so you can go through. I'm also going to have all of the links to every article that I used when I was looking through this stuff. I know this was a very long and packed in episode, so there's a lot of information there that you can go through and dig a little bit deeper into. This is episode number 146, The Golfer's Guide to Hydration. If you want any more info, just go to 18strong.com, search number 146. Can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here. Big thanks to our sponsors for this episode, which are Rad Roller and the new player profiles on the PGA Tour, the players pages. So go check all of those out. And if you haven't subscribed to the iTunes or Stitcher or whatever podcast app you use and you listen to us on, go do that. That's the best way to show the rest of the podcast world that 18 Strong is worth a listen. And just one more thing, I'm going to continue this conversation in our private Facebook group, the 18 Strong Movement, and just see what other products, what other recommendations different professionals that are in that group and some of the other golfers in that group have and what they recommend. So we're going to continue that over there. If you're not a member of the 18 Strong Movement, just go to Facebook, look up the 18 Strong Movement, ask for approval. And once you're in, obviously you're ready to rock. All right, we look forward to seeing you over there, and I will catch up with you next week. Train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.